Hello medieval engineers, Gopescope here from the Gopescope gaming channel, and I'm excited to bring you our first ever Medieval Engineers episode. In this episode we will delve into the anatomy of a castle. There are so many esoteric terms related to castles, and though you don't necessarily need to know them in order to play this game, I find it a much more enjoyable and rich experience to have some degree of understanding behind the real-life inspiration for games. So I thought what better place to start for our first episode than to cover some of the well-known to not so well-known terms, features, and structures related to castles. I should note that there are many different types of castles and fortifications, so for the sake of clarity and brevity, we will be focusing mainly on post-Roman, pre-gunpowder, Western castle terms. Now, even within the confines of that scope, European castles are staggeringly varied and immensely complex fortifications, so where do we even begin? Well, let's start at the heart of the castle, the keep. The keep, also sometimes known as the Great Tower, donjon, or Burgfried. Not that donjon, it's a different donjon. This is the strongest and or central tower of a castle. It is a final refuge, the place where the most important people would be protected during a siege. While these terms are largely interchangeable, it is important to note that a Burgfried differs slightly from a keep or donjon in that it is not designed for permanent habitation. What we have here is a defensive structure with living areas, bedrooms, eating areas, and storerooms, and so it is most accurate to call this a keep, donjon, or great tower. An interesting bit of trivia on the subject: dungeon is an English corruption of the French word donjon, which is a corruption of the Latin term dominarium, which means lordship. Our keep looks pretty lonely out here, and if a keep is a final refuge, we should have some defenses to stop attackers before they reach the keep. Or it would really be the only refuge. That's better. Meet the curtain wall. With its integrated towers providing both structural support and improved defensive firing positions, the curtain wall surrounds and protects both the keep and the courtyard, also sometimes known as ward or bailey, though sometimes the keep itself also makes up part of the curtain wall. These walls and the wards they surround vary in size from just a small area, perhaps only an acre or less, to encompassing a whole city. A fortification such as the latter is often referred to as a citadel. One of the best examples of these immense city-spanning fortresses is Carcassonne in France. But alas, a true citadel is outside the limits of this episode. From its base to its height, this wall is made up of the batter or talus, which is the wider sloped section at the base, critical for maintaining structural integrity, especially during a siege or an earthquake when a wall's metal is truly tested. Then there is the vertical section, and at the top we have a low wall on the outside edge called a parapet, which protects the walkway behind. And these higher and lower sections are called crenulations. Together, we can call this the battlement. It is from this elevated and protected position that archers can rain death down upon attackers below, in relative safety. These corner towers provide critical support for the walls adjoining them, both in terms of structure and defense. Round or square, they are as important to the curtain wall system as the walls themselves. Now we have the very basics of the curtain wall put together here, but these long straight spans don't look strong enough to me, so let's add some support. Our support comes in the form of these new lower towers, known as drum towers. Circular and generally squat, these are built into the side of a curtain wall to act as a buttress, but also provide another opportunity for defenders to achieve enfilading fire on attackers below. We can also see another structural feature in these towers worth mentioning, and that is these stones which project outward from the tower wall. Stepping stones out from a wall like this is called corbelling, and the structure created by this particular corbelling can be called a bartizan. This is a very simple bartizan, however. They can be far more elaborate and are frequently in closed positions, whereas this one is more of an open design. Though not shown here, murder holes can also be a feature of these overhangs. Murder holes are simply holes in the floor of a defensive position which allow defenders to drop rocks, shoot arrows, and pour all manner of horror down upon attackers below. Now that we have a stronger curtain wall, you may notice a serious design flaw. We have no way in or out. But a fortification like this can't just have any old door. So meet the Gatehouse. This structure consists of interconnected towers and walls, which protect a passage through the curtain wall, as well as a means to control access to that passageway. In this particular case, we have two portcullises. A portcullis is simply a lattice of timber or iron which runs along vertical grooves in either side of the wall of the passageway in which they are mounted. and can be raised and lowered by some system of pulleys, gears, and/or counterweights. The portcullis has the advantage of being very fast to close because it relies only on gravity to lower. Though not always the case, sometimes portcullises have even been used to trap an attacker against the main door or another portcullis, where guards in the gatehouse can use murder holes in the ceiling above to dispatch their enemies and strike fear into the hearts of those laying siege. Another feature worth mentioning is the arrow loop. There is no real arrow loop in this game as far as I can tell, at least not yet, but we can use these varying size openings to illustrate the point anyway. The idea of an arrow loop is to provide the maximum field of fire for a defending archer while maintaining the protection afforded by the wall. Therefore, the opening of the arrow loop is larger on the inside than it is on the outside. This allows the archer room to draw, as well as strafe to a degree in order to broaden his field of fire. It would be almost unheard of for a castle of this size to have just one means of ingress and egress, which is where the postern gate comes in. This is simply a side or rear gate which is smaller and less important than the main gate, and is often used mainly for pedestrian traffic. These smaller gates would likely be sealed in a quasi-permanent manner if an enemy army was approaching. However, if it is a strong enough gate, it may be left accessible to the castle defenders to be used as a sally port. A sally port is a second gate, or door, which can be used by castle defenders as a portal from which to sally forth and attack and then retire. By using a secondary gate in this manner, castle defenders might catch attackers off guard at a critical moment and will often certainly be attacking from the flank or rear, which is of course advantageous. And with that, we've come to the end of this episode, but there will be more to come. We still have quite a few features to cover before we're through. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to see more, please hit those like and subscribe buttons. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more.